from Group 5, we would like to present all the material from third meeting until 7th meeting. Before that, introduce our members. The first, Lisnari Yang Zebua. Second, Jessica Kristanti Talombanua. The third, Fetri Selvian Zebua. And the last is Yarli Nurlina Talombanua. About the definition of surface reading. Surface reading is broadens the scope of critique to include the kinds of interpretive activity that seek to understand the complexity of literary surface. It is about where we read the surface or initial words that make use expand our ideas, where the scope of critics raise us active in giving opinions from the views we read and trying to understand the difficulties on the surface of literature.
Well, everyone, so now I would like to continue to explain the material, especially in the function of surface reading. So I would like to explain, based on our explanation, based on our discussion in our group, we get a third point, especially in the function of surface reading. That is, first, to know the purpose of the text in general description. So here the meaning is, when we use the surface reading, we can get the purpose of the text in general description, not detailed description. So the second is know the type of literature used in the text, starting from the grammar and reading structure in general. So it is meaning, when we use the surface reading, we can now we can identify what is the literature used by the author. So like the grammar, like the language, like or the structure of the text. And the last is the minimize the time and find out the important things from a reading text. So here, when we use the surface reading, we can minimize our time, because we get the meaning with the fast, to find out the important things from the reading text. So we continue reading. Definition of deep reading. Deep reading is a consumption of long or substantial text that challenge the reader emotionally and intellectually. The deep reading is the text or the technique when we read the text, like must be seriously and requires as a long of enough span of time to find out the more about the text in detail. This reading can be said the challenges of the reader, because in the reading the reader must or has to make the more sense and animate in the text with detail. So a reader can feel the emotional, can fit the gap of the emotional based on the text. In here, the emotional of the text, it is the case like the feedback we give when reading the text. If we are able to find out the emotional point, like such as sad or happy, so it is make us to understanding with us to success in deep reading.
Well, let's move into another part about characteristics of deep reading. So, there are some characteristics of deep reading. The first is focus on interpretation, where reading involves interpreting the text not just summarizing or illustrating it. The next, analyzing of themes and motifs involves identifying recurring themes and motifs in a text and exploring how they develop and are linked together. The next is attention to literary devices. Deep reading involves analyzing the author's use of literary devices such as metaphor, symbolism, and irony, and exploring how they contribute to the meaning of the text. The next is involves understanding the social, historical, and cultural context in which a text is produced and exploring how a text reflects and responds to the context. The next part about steps of deep reading. Well, I would like to explain about the steps of deep reading. For the first is use a hard copy book. And then have no digital devices in the room. The next is read with a pen or highlighter, and then keep a notebook nearly, and then read for at least 30 minutes. The next is think of deep reading as a muscle. You have got to train it. And the last one is read as much as you can. Well, that's all our my explanation about this part. And
Okay, I will continue the material differences between surface reading and deep reading. First, velocity deep reading is slower than superficial reading. It does not skip line or paragraph. The superficial one is faster and jump. It skips word and line. And the second, intensity and superficial reading does above, seeking to get a general idea. Deep reading stops at the concept and ideas contained in each sentence. Third, form and content. Superficial reading tries to capture the general idea without dwelling on the style or the formal aspect of the language. In deep reading, what is said and how it said is important. And the last, exploration and interpretation. The superficial reading is an exploratory reading. It allows us to know a new book and content, while deep reading is interpretive, analytical, seek to understand and delve into the content. That's all my explanation, and thank you.
That's all the presentation of our group 5, and thank you.